Morning, everybody. My name is Steve Hernandez, and I'm the Executive Director of the Legislature's Commission on Women, Children, Seniors, Equity, and Opportunity. Today, we're hosting the second of our series of conversations called Small Business Matters, where we focus on our small Connecticut businesses that are making a difference on behalf of the lives of the people that not only that they employ, but that they serve as well. Today, the focus of our conversation today will be driving innovation on the spectrum. We're going to be focusing on a business in the state of Connecticut called Next Street, which is innovating to provide a vital service and life skill to people on the autism spectrum. The conversation will feature the owner of Next Street, Mr. Brandon Dufour, David J. Rotatori, the president of the Ion Bank, along with State Representative Kathy Abercrombie, one of our leading advocates on behalf of people on the spectrum here in the state of Connecticut. I want to move straight into our conversation because I'm really excited to be able to talk about this particular business and how it is that you were innovating even before this emergency, before the pandemic, and what you've been able to do since then in order to continue to provide this vital service. But before we do that, I would love each of you to introduce yourselves and why this work and the work either of autism advocacy or the work that you are doing is important to you. Let's start with Brandon Dufour. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me. So my name is Brandon Dufour. I'm the founder and CEO of the Next Street. We're a large driving school in Connecticut. We educate about 20,000 new drivers per year. And about a year ago, one of our students that is on the autism spectrum approached us after going through the program and said, "You have a lot of opportunities here to better serve this community. After going through your program, it was helpful, but it wasn't really helpful enough." And so we took that feedback, and over the last year, I've been building out a new driver program specific to students on the autism spectrum, which we'll talk more about today.
That's great. Thank you, Brandon. Welcome, David Rotatori, president of Ion Bank.
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is David Rotatori, as you said. I've been the president for about 3 years now here at the bank. I've been back about 10. I actually worked here in high school and college and came back about 10 years ago. And, as a true community bank, Ion Bank is a mutually held bank. So our mission for 150 years, which we've been around for, and we're celebrating our 150th this year, we literally work for the depositors in the community. So whatever those needs are, we're as close as you can and get to them. There's no shareholders that own the bank. The depositors literally own the bank. So our first priority is to our customers and our community. So we've got an advantage of being closely connected to small businesses, closely connected to all the organizations, the nonprofit organizations that exist in each town. And so I feel that, and I'm not trying to bash the larger banks, but we're a lot closer connected to the community. We literally are part of the community. So we work with people like Brandon and other small businesses in our areas to make sure they have all the resources that they need.
Thank you, David. From small business to community bank. I like that we're focusing on Connecticut-based institutions. Hey, Kathy.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Doing
nice
well.
to see everyone on this call today. I'm Representative Kathy Abercrombie. I represent the 83rd District, which is Meriden, Berlin, and Kensington. I am the co-chairwoman of Human Services. And the issue that's been near and dear to my heart over the last 15 years as an elected official is making sure that individuals on the spectrum's needs are being met, whether it's mandating insurance coverage for them or just common sense public policy. And I thank everybody that's on this call because I think this is as some of your other people have said, an opportunity for individuals on the spectrum. So I look forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Kathy. You know, one of the principles of the commission by which we serve is nothing for us without us. And in part of the preparation for today, you know, we thought with our self-advocates, whether or not having this format be the format in which they present their self-advocacy is the right format for them. There was a decision that this wasn't it, for reasons that are peculiar to, you know, this medium and other reasons. But I do want to tell you that we are working with self-advocates, not the least of which Andrew Arbo. We're going to be developing a separate conversation called the Spectrum of Success, where we'll be focusing especially on young people and people on the autism spectrum who are succeeding and doing and producing and just living their best lives. And so be on the lookout for that. So I'd like to turn first to Brandon. You know, Brandon, even before this emergency, you did touch on this a little bit, but I'd like to know a little bit more about just your values and why it was important for you to really serve as much of your community as possible.
So we focused heavily on empathy, humanity, and compassion. Those are the core principles at the Next Street that we always return to. And we've had those in place in the entire 11 years we've been in business. And I think by having that foundation, when things like a pandemic happen, we have a point that we can return to guide our decision making. So when Andrew Arbo approached us and pointed out, you know, some of the challenges of driving while on the autism spectrum, we immediately turned to empathy, humanity, and compassion and said, yes, this is the right thing. We need to go be empathetic and learn about this community and make sure that we can serve them in the right way. And, you know, what we learned in going through that process is transportation is a major barrier for somebody on the autism spectrum. So lack of transportation options, especially in rural and even suburban Connecticut, is a real challenge. And you know, you can't jump on a subway train. Sometimes bus routes that are available will be 2 to 3 hours. And, you know, Uber can be a really scary experience for somebody that's on the autism spectrum. And so the ability for somebody to go and get their driver's license is so much more than just the ability to drive. It represents freedom. It represents responsibility. In a lot of cases, it represents normalcy. It makes them feel like they can do what their friends can do. And so what we learned is people with autism are outstanding drivers. 25 miles an hour means 25 miles an hour. We are talking about a rule following group of people that what the law says is when we say you need to stop at a stop sign for 3 seconds, our students are literally stopping and counting to 3. They are super talented. But the challenges that come up are more of the unknown stimulus that in a lot of cases you can't control. If sirens come up behind somebody driving and they have autism, that can be a real detrimental situation. Or being pulled over by a police officer. If the police officer doesn't treat them with a certain level of respect or dignity, it could cause a complete mental breakdown. And so we've been building out this program that is specific to those challenges and those needs. And it's not drastically different than what we do with any new driver, but it's just different enough to make it a little more accessible, a little less scary. And it's been really important.
That's great, Brandon. Kathy, I want to turn to you for a second because, you know, one thing that's been a hallmark of how it is that you have lived on behalf of this community is that you understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all.
That's right.
And also, you work very closely with law enforcement for training to be more sensitive to situations where they may encounter people on the spectrum. Can you tell us a little bit about each of those?
Sure. So over the years, we've done many pieces of legislation to really educate law enforcement and even the public, right? So a couple of years ago, we did a bill around elopement, right? We know that kids on the spectrum are drawn to water. So if a child does get out of his home, which they do, they're very skillful, even parents, they have security systems. The kids watch, they get the numbers, and when the parent isn't looking, they let themselves out. So we've done a lot of education around there. Last year, we did a bill around individuals on the spectrum being able to carry a blue envelope with them so that if they do get pulled over from a police officer, the officer understands that they're on the spectrum. We did, and this is where legislation is really important because originally we thought there would be something on their license. Not every person on the spectrum wants to be identified as being on the spectrum, right? Because we know the spectrum is so wide. So kids that are high functioning that are on the spectrum don't necessarily tell people that they are. So it was their recommendation to give the option to individuals to be able to carry this card with them. So I think as we do as elected officials, when we do public policy, it's really important to make sure that those that we're serving have a voice. I've been part of the Southern Autism Advisory board since it was developed back probably 8 years now. And I've served on the state's Autism Advisory Council since probably 2006. So, it's putting all of the stakeholders in the same room and figuring out good policy that works for everybody. Because you're absolutely right. It isn't one size fits all. And the reality is every person looks at themselves differently. So we should make sure that our policy aligns what they feel comfortable with. If I don't want to identify that I'm on the spectrum, I should have that right.
And that Blue Envelope program, just so you know, Representative Abercrombie, is brilliant and so well received. And I think it's the number one fear we hear from parents of students on the autism spectrum, and a major reason that they're not pushing their child, their young adult, to go and get their license is fear of what happens when they get pulled over. If that happens, it could be jail time because my son or daughter is going to have a significant meltdown. And so just for us, having that blue envelope makes it a conversation point that we can include in our training to the student. But now we also have something to talk to our law enforcement partners about and say, look, this is happening. Right. And it's been so well received and is such an important part of the process.
That's great to hear. Thank you. It's really important as we do public policy to make sure that we get feedback, whether it's positive or not, right? Because we don't always get it right the first time around. So I'm happy to hear that it's being well received.
Thank you, Kathy. Now, Brandon, you had started some of this work, and I'm gonna talk to you a little bit, but I'll have David weigh in a second. You had started this work before the emergency hit. So tell us a little bit about what happened. What your process, not only as the owner of a driving school, but also for this initiative. How was it that you were able to pivot from your business model in order to accommodate the emergency?
So on February 29th, we employed 150 people, and we were serving somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 new customers a month that needed their driver's license. And on March 16th, we had to furlough our entire staff, and we went to serving 0 customers. And that it was kind of the 7 stages of grief, or however they frame it, of realizing in mid to late February that this was a thing. And then every day thereafter realizing like, oh, we might have to limit our services. Oh, we might have to drastically limit our services. Oh, we might have to close. Oh, we're definitely closing. What does that mean, right? So that was and then doing it and having to have 150 conversations with our staff who are basically our second family. I mean, these are people that we know about their families, and we spend social time with them, and to tell them that their wages that were always guaranteed to them were about to be taken away was really hard. But then it quickly went into innovation mode of, okay, this doesn't feel good. Let's do something different. And so we worked closely with the Department of Motor Vehicles and got them to approve remote driving classes. So the classroom portion now is being taught remotely on Zoom. And that was approved early April. And then about a week later, with the help of Ion Bank, we were approved for the payroll protection program, the SBA loan, which brought in it gave us runway to bring our staff back, but we couldn't do our core service of teaching kids how to drive and getting them their license. So then it was, okay, well, what projects, what things can we be giving to our staff to help them grow and be more valuable to us and to the marketplace? So we've been doing a ton of staff training, but also what projects can we give them that will help the company be better positioned to serve once we are able to return from the pandemic. So just that brainstorming was such a fun process to go through. I mean, it stunk to have to go through it, but going through it, I think, forced my staff to be really creative and to kind of take away all of the barriers that we usually have as it relates to innovation, and say everything's on the table at this point. So let's just figure out what we can do. So we have staff members right now building out like a NASCAR style camera kit inside of a car so that we could potentially do driving lessons remotely with a parent in the passenger seat instead of our instructor, and then the instructor sitting somewhere and watching a live stream. I have no idea if that's going to work, but the fact that we're even trying it now has really forced my team to realize it's okay to try and fail, which I think is going to be, I hope that that lasts well beyond this pandemic and that we keep that new creative mindset. So that's how we're figuring it out. But Ion Bank, they're our partners. Without them and without the PPP, we'd be in a very, very different position.
David, that's a good transition to you because I know that your motto is building lifetime relationships and serving our community. So tell us a little bit, Brandon comes to you with this innovation and this need to really pivot. Tell me what happened on your end.
Yeah, these are the things that it's hard to describe, the feelings you get when you are in a bank and you're doing financial services. A lot of what we do is kind of routine, regular stuff. The exciting parts of our business is when you sit down with small business owners, and this is the best part of my job now, is when I'm out meeting with people like Brendan, that they have the not only the drive to run a business, a successful business, and provide a great service, and just his service, his regular service is good. On the autism spectrum, that's just another level of things that he's doing. But when you sit down with somebody that is being innovative and not just curling up and just staying at home saying, I'm not going to do anything in this process as the world shuts down, but I'm gonna see what I can do. What can I do to be better? What can my company be better? Even though I can't really do most of what I've done, what can I do now? When you interact with somebody, you just feel the energy from him and from other small business owners that you're like, hey, what can we do to help them do what they got to do? And so instead of being focused on the negative news and all the negative things and all the challenges are out there, and I don't want to take away from the sickness itself and the fact that people are going through challenges, but the fact that people like Brandon and other small businesses are being innovative in a challenging time, thinking about how we can move forward, it lifts our whole bank up and says to our employees, I can't wait to get to work to help more small businesses get through this crisis. And there's some exceptions where they're not just getting through, but they're excelling. And in the case of NextStreet, they're actually excelling through this process. And like Brendan said, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But the opportunity to make it work and the fact that he's innovating all the time makes our job exciting to be able to help provide that services. And when the PPP program started, we were, I guess, fortunate to kind of see this coming before it really happened. In two ways. One is we have a pandemic exercise at banking. The regulators actually require us to do it, and most years you do it and you're thinking, let's hope this never gets off the shelf. Well, obviously we're glad we had it, because when we pulled it off the shelf, we realized how quickly we needed to react to get ready. And we had stockpiles of masks and gloves and stuff like that and a whole plan. And so we started with that process early. Thankfully, when the governor came out and said, hey, we're going to do this PPP program, this is how it's going to help small businesses. We live on small businesses. Our entire existence wouldn't be possible without small businesses supporting the bank, and then we support back the communities. And so when we saw this coming, we said we got to be ready for this. We've got to reach out to our customers and we started off with our existing customers, say, hey, we've got to make sure that they all are aware of what's coming, and they should get prepared. They should start looking at payroll, because we could sense that there was going to be a rush to get to this program, because the way they laid it out was that it was first come, first serve. That got us started early, and thankfully within the first weekend we had the vast majority of our customers were already set. And that's when you probably saw in the news that other banks were refusing outside customers. They were not taking customers unless they had loans. We actually started reaching out to businesses right away saying, hey, come to us, because of a story like we did with Brandon is, to help him get through this cycle and bring some of his people back. And when he says, hey, I can try to do something else with these people at the same time and potentially, propel us forward when we do reopen, how much better are we going to be if we can all survive, not only survive this, but thrive coming out of this? So it really motivated our team and our staff to see stories like NextStreet. And I could literally give you every day. In fact, I got another one today. I get letters coming in to me that say, thank you for your team. I mean, we had teammates working 14, 15-hour days all the way through Easter Sunday. And there was such motivation hearing stories like NextStreet and what Brendan was doing, that there was so much energy that nobody was tired and complaining. They were just working as diligently as they could to get all these small businesses as much support as we could, so they could do programs like Brendan's putting in. And the other thing that we've done since then, just to go on a little, is that we have a foundation that we support lots of nonprofits with, and several of them I know, the United Way of Greater Waterbury and the United Way of Naugatuck Beacon Falls have organizations that support autism and some of the things that they do. And the Naugatuck YMCA, actually, which is right across the street, they have a program. So we support those types of programs. All these businesses that are coming to us, helping generate the PPP funds, we're going to take all these new customers, and obviously there's some revenue that we'll generate over the next few years from these new customers, and we're trying to put that back into our community. As I said, a mutual bank, because we don't have shareholders, we try to take 10% of our earnings every year, and instead of giving out dividends, we give it to our foundation, and then that goes through to nonprofits supporting all different nonprofit organizations. So in a way, it's a mini cycle of we're helping small businesses. They're going to help some of the community. We're going to generate some revenue. We're going to give it back to the community. And it just creates this nice cycle of events that it gives us such motivation to work really hard. And that's why I'm proud to be part of a mutual bank here in Connecticut.
David, thank you for that. You know, what you described, tithing for the community, is such an amazing concept. Giving 10% of what you're making and putting it back, investing in community. You know, it shows us that there are two types of relationships that matter to you, not just the relationships that you have with your the folks that hold for which you hold loans, small businesses that you work with, but also the relationship with the communities in which you sit. And that relationship is critical, because what that does is it allowed you to reach out to people who weren't necessarily your customers and clients, and to expand the way that you operate in the state of Connecticut. Kathy, you know, parents are watching, and you know, there's so much innovation here and so many things that are, you know, one thing that Brandon talked about, which is having a parent or a caregiver next to you in the seat while you learn how to drive in a coordinated way. Why does this matter to parents, Kathy?
Well, because, you know, children that are on the spectrum, or any parent of a child with disability, wants to make sure that any movements they make forward in life, that parents are there to guide them and to make sure they're safe. You know, we know that kids on the spectrum, the part of their disability is the part that makes them sometimes unsafe, right? Because they don't know it. And so anytime that we give the parent an opportunity to take this journey with their child, it's a win-win situation. The other piece is these kids rely on their parents for support, right? So if I'm a mother of a child on the spectrum and I can help my child navigate, you know, this journey of life, how much better is it than that? And then the third piece is it also gives them independence, right? Because in a way, once they learn it, they know they have that support team then backing them up. They're not afraid to take this step. So, you know, parents play, especially in the disability world, a huge, huge seat at the table. And if I can, before you move on, I just want to give kudos to Ion Bank. I sit on a lot of nonprofits here in Meriden. And not only does Ion put their money where their mouth is, their staff sits on numerous boards. And I sit on different boards with a lot of their members from Ion. So I want to say thank you to them for that, because it's one thing, yes, money's very important, especially now, we know that, but they also want to be part of the team. So thank you to Ion Bank.
Glad to do it, Kathy. I'll just mention that we literally expect our employees to contribute volunteer hours. It's part of the hiring process. And I'm proud to say last year we exceeded 8,000 hours of volunteer hours, including sitting on some of the boards that you're talking about. And you know, I've sit on a few myself, and it's always a great reminder of what the impact that individuals can have, and then you put the individuals together that are committed to something, and the support is just overwhelming. And my daughters often, you know, get to see some of that. My wife spent some time with the food bank yesterday, and she had done it pre-COVID and after, and she said, what a difference it is now. The process is totally different, but we're still providing food to people that really need it. So, you know, I'm very proud to be part of the organization. But Kathy, yeah, Meriden, we try to do a lot in Meriden.
Yes, you do.
Over time in that area, there was several community banks in that area that ended up getting gobbled up from larger banks. So it takes away from some of the community. So it's been an opportunity for us to kind of showcase the true community bank that I think we provide a good service to all the residents in the towns.
That's
Totally
great.
agree.
And thank you for reminding us that, you are a community bank in several communities in the state of Connecticut. So what's really, and Brandon, I know that you serve several parts of the state as well. So the reach, you are homegrown, but your impact is really state felt. And that's really powerful. Kathy, we're so excited that you're here because you're a parent, you are an advocate, but you're also a leader, and your leadership in ushering through really difficult legislation that is informed by the people who are going to be impacted is really powerful. So, we have, Brandon, I know that your journey wasn't always as easy or as nimble as you would have hoped. So you have us here. We're having a public conversation. Tell us about how you feel things could have been done better in your trajectory to pivoting in the way that you did.
Internally for my own company, you mean?
Sure, in your company during this emergency.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things I wish I had a mulligan on, and there are a lot of things that I think we did really well. So we got ahead of this early. I have a really outstanding leadership team. It's about an 8 or 9 person team that leads the company in a variety of different buckets. And we meet every week. And in late January, one of my leadership team members says, we need to move this to a daily meeting and we need to be talking about COVID every day. And that was in like February 1st, we started that.
Wow.
And that made it so that we were able to send regular communications to our staff. So they basically had 6 weeks notice that this might be coming and that they should be stockpiling money. So the majority of my 150 employees are hourly wage earners that are in the $15 to $18 an hour range. And that wage range is paycheck to paycheck, and there are struggles that come with that. And so just by being able to communicate clearly, openly with them, we built such a trust within our staff that even now today, they're calling us and saying thank you. And we decided to close 5 days before the governor told everybody that they had to close. And so by doing that, our staff was 5 days early to the unemployment line. And it made it so they were able to actually get their cash in their bank account, which mattered so much, right? The real worry was, I can't pay my rent. I can't buy groceries. I can't buy diapers. I can't get the minimum. And because of the way that unemployment is structured, we couldn't even give money to our staff. If we started paying them or giving them microloans, they would no longer qualify to get unemployment while they were in the waiting line. So we were really proud of the communication that we got out. I think once we found out that we could do remote classes, we got really excited and we rushed it and we tried to get it out in a week. And I would mulligan that. I would take a good 2 or 3 weeks to prepare and like do it the right way, where our motivation was, we can do this, let's tell everybody and let's start serving our customers because they want normalcy. And we could have used another week or two. It ended up causing confusion and customer service issues, and people were patient for the most part, but we have such a high standard for ourselves from a service standpoint all the time. And we didn't even come close to our service standards as it related to remote classes. And while it might be easy to point to COVID and be like, it's the time, I don't want to use that as an excuse. So, as we've gone back now and debriefed, whenever we do go back to in-person services, we're going to take our time and do it a little more slowly.
Now, public and private partnerships really matter in getting through a lot of this, getting through emergencies, certainly, but also in just doing business. And, Kathy, our 2Gen initiative, one of the things that we really promote is cross-agency communication,
Right.
talking to each other so that we can serve the public and work with the public more efficiently. Tell us about your experience. I know that DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, is one of the agencies that you work with. Tell us about your experience there.
I think for the most part, most of the agencies want to do the right thing, right? And it's always the devil in the details. But I have to say that, autism information has grown so much over the last, I've been an elected official for 15 years now. And I remember back in 2005 calling a friend whose son had autism and saying, "Hey, Robin, I'm looking to take on a cause as a new legislator. What's this thing called autism?" Right? And now here we are 15 years later, and it has grown where everybody knows somebody who either has a child on the spectrum, a cousin, a friend. So, I think that when you talk about serving, especially individuals with disabilities, I think agencies take notice and they want to help. So I don't think it was a bad experience at all. I would like to just say to Brandon at this point, I would love for you to send me an email about some of the changes that you did, like, for example, the remote classes that you think that we could make permanent. I think what people have to understand is that all of the governor's executive orders go away in certain periods of time. Most of them will be going away by the end of September. And some of them were good public policy. So the governor does not have the authority to make them permanent. They still have to go through the legislative branch. So I'm gathering right now good policies that we've done through the COVID to introduce next session. So I'm really interested about this remote classes because I hear from parents all the time about having to take these classes, So I think this might be something we might want to keep permanent if we can.
Can I second that? Two of my daughters have gone through the Next Street program and loved it. I have one more on the way starting this summer, so I would love to do that.
And I have to tell you, we did try to change it so that if you had a child that got their license within a 2-year period, and you wouldn't have to take the class. We got a lot of pushback from that. But we did try to make it so that you didn't have to take the class, again. But I think that there's some lessons learned from this COVID that are good public policy that we can take forward. So I'm working with, I'm part of the Women's Caucus, which is the biggest caucus. It's a bipartisan caucus. And we actually had a meeting yesterday with our leadership to talk about the fact that, some of these policies we want to see put forward permanently and the process that we're going to go through. So any of the processes that you see, even yourself, through the banking, I don't sit on banking, but I can put these proposals forward. I don't sit on DMV either, but appropriations. So I've got a little bit of leeway there. Please send me an email about them. And for Brandon, for you, because I'm human services, as you can imagine, I get hundreds of emails. In the subject matter, if you can put driving school and autism, that will red flag for me and my staff, what it's about. So I'd love to work with you on some of these things. Agencies for the most part want to do the right thing. I'll say it again. And I think that the public has to understand that they really have an opportunity to push these agendas forward, right? Every bill has to have a public hearing. That's good policy because that's how we're able to take a proposal and find the good and the bad, right? And at the end of the day, we don't want to have to come back the next year and amend it because we missed a piece or, we want to add something to it. So we really do like to get it right the first time.
Thank you, Kathy. And Brandon, first of all, thank you for that offer, Kathy. And we'll work with Brandon on his letter of recommendations, Brandon and David. And Brandon, I want to focus the letter to be, what the successes were, what are the things that we want to make permanent and promote even past pandemic, because we've learned so many great things in by being creative. And also those innovations that you mentioned. Also, what could have been done better, more seamlessly. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, I think I am a person that believes that the state of Connecticut doesn't necessarily have a regulatory issue. They have an employee culture issue. And so in our communications with the DMV, it has been very one way. So as an example, we serve close to 2/3 of the new driver population in Connecticut with our driver's ed program. Last Friday at 3 p.m., we got an email that said permit testing starts again on Tuesday. That's all the email said. It didn't
Really?
say where, it didn't say health precautions, it didn't give us any indication as to how people were going to be prioritized or not. And we were never collaborated with, right? Which I think to me is such a miss, because we have an opportunity to communicate with 2/3 of the marketplace, to be able to say to them through our text messaging and through our emails and in our Zoom classes, here is exactly what's happening with permit testing. And my concern now is that the same thing is going to happen with license testing, which we serve a massive part of the population. And we're putting our own health precautions in place. So when we do return to in-person services, it's going to be required masks, required gloves, hand sanitizer, disinfecting car, all the things that we know we're supposed to do. And in our past experience with DMV inspectors, they show up and they do it the way that they want to do it. Without much regard for what our business practices are or our policies are. And they take a very hard line. It's almost like a power stance of, no, we're going to do it my way. And I just find that to be counterproductive. And there's even now, even today in the pandemic, we still don't have a communication structure to talk to government with immediate needs. So an immediate need that we have is we could hire 30 new driving instructors today. Like, we need people for when we go back, and we're going to need in the range of 30 to 40 new people. And there are a lot of people out to work. So we see a big opportunity to employ people today. But the DMV, for us to have a new driving instructor, requires a fingerprint background check with the state police, which is closed. And it requires a test to be completed with a DMV inspector, which is closed. So we reached out to DMV and with a proposed alternative, allow us to do private background checks. So we'll use a private company and we'll submit the results to you, and allow our certified master instructors to facilitate the actual test and submit the results to you. And this will allow us today to hire 30 people. And the response was, we don't have a mechanism to change the regulation. And I kind of go, like, that's a now need that is good for the state. It's not bad for anybody. And you can't, in a pandemic, point to a regulation and say, well, the regulation here says that we can't do that. Because the regulation also says we can't teach classes remotely, but somehow through an executive order that got changed. And I think there are a number of things that we can do positively, but as a business owner, I don't feel like I have a communication structure to get those things changed. And Representative Abercrombie, I've been to the public hearings, I've gone to the transportation committee, I've met with the commissioners, we've hired lobbyists. But if someone within the DMV disagrees with what we're saying for any reason, it gets canceled and there's no further conversation about it. It's not collaborative, it's not brainstorming, it's not sitting around the table and let's get stuff done. It's, here's the process. It takes 2 to 4 years to get something changed. You need to have regular meetings with this person and that person, and they're only available on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. It's those types of excuses, which again, I think are cultural, not regulatory. I think that somebody should address the culture of the state.
You know, it's interesting, and I appreciate you saying that, Brandon, because I think, you know, legislative leaders and executive branch leaders, I think they try and address this continually. And I think one thing that the executive branch does is that, you know, from whether it's the Department of Education or our Labor Department, I think they recognize at the very top that listening and being nimble and being mobile and being active and being leaders, the message really matters. But I think what you're referring to is really getting down to the person that is working with the public directly and having that leadership trickle down all the way to the people that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And that takes effort and that takes work and that takes leadership. And, you know, I think part of what we're learning from this emergency, and, you know, unfortunately, sometimes it takes an emergency to really have these things come to the fore, is that communication lines and those lines of continuous improvement to the way that we do the work of government is really, really critical. I know that Kathy pushes for that in her jurisdiction, and so many of our other legislative colleagues do as well. And so one thing that I am really, really optimistic and hopeful about is exactly what Kat said before, which is that line of constant communication during and after this pandemic has to improve, and I think will improve, because I think we all recognize how critical it is to be able to serve the public. And listen, a regulation is there for a reason, but so is the ability to be able to be nimble and to be able to pivot in moments of emergency so that we can continue to do the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that there's room for improvement, and as it relates to leadership, here's my own leadership philosophy. It is my responsibility as the founder and CEO of my company to have a clearly defined vision that is communicated out to my staff, team members that believe in that greater vision, and that a set of values that align them around decision making. And once all of that is in place, all I have to do is provide a communication structure for them to collaborate with each other. And when I look at the state of Connecticut, if there is a clear vision, I don't know it, right? I don't know what the vision for the state of Connecticut is in a sentence. Somebody that could say to me, Connecticut is going to be the #1 state in the world, right? Just some aspirational vision for the future. And I don't know what that aspirational vision is. And then a group of values that align every employee in the state of Connecticut, from commissioner on down to bottom level in every single department, all believe in these values. And if you don't, then the state of Connecticut's not the right employer for you, right? Like, and that's how we do when we interview people. If you don't believe in empathy, humanity, compassion, no problem. There are other places that also don't. Go work there. And then once that's in place, a communication standard that says the governor is going to have a weekly huddle with all commissioners on Monday at 11 a.m. And you're required to attend every Monday at 11 a.m. And we're going to make sure that all of the stuff that's happening at the top is being trickled down throughout the ranks with clear, open communication around the table. And I think if those types of meetings or that type of communication rhythm and standards started to be built at the top, it would have no choice but to trickle down further. But I don't, as a resident, I don't see it.
I'll tell you one thing that I am hopeful about, because I'm an eternal optimist, as you know, Kathy. We've known each other for a long time. I know that one of the governor's top advisors, Lisa Tepper Bates, is actually working now to help build community-based roundtables that include members of the community to start exactly that type of immediate feedback loop that you're describing. And what's good about that is that I think that they're hearing you. I think that they're hearing that communication from the ground up is going to matter, because that's how we're going to inform the improvement of how it is that we work as a government to serve you. So we hear you. I know that legislative leaders are working very hard in their communities right now to be community leaders, as well as working hard on coming back to lead at the state level, and are meeting every day with the executive branch to inform their thinking. So I'm really glad that, you know, I appreciate your candor, Brandon, and I appreciate the fact that we are all building this ship as we fly it, and I'm excited to see it continuously improve as we serve the people.
Can I give a tactical one that to bring it back to autism? So BRS has a driver training program. That driver training program is only for people with physical disabilities. So people on the autism spectrum disorder don't qualify to go through the state disability training program. And that to me is a major flaw that needs to be addressed as soon as possible, because the state is basically saying that cognitive disabilities aren't a priority. If you have physical disabilities, we'll take care of you and there's no charge. Oh, you have a cognitive disability? Sorry, we don't have services for you. And it's such a disservice. And I think that has to be addressed as soon as humanly possible.
So let me just, so I do have to speak to that, because I think the challenge is that they're not identified through IDEA and federal law. That it's been a challenge that we have been trying to address for years. You know, autism is such a unique disability, because most disabilities, right, you have a test, right? So if you have diabetes, right, you can identify it through a blood test, right? If you have other physical disabilities, right? There's a test. Autism doesn't, because it's a spectrum. And I agree with you. That's where it becomes very challenging. I will say that a lot of the reasons why we can't align them with people with the disability world is because we're prohibited under federal law. So it's a really fine line that we have been trying to address. I think what we do is, from my point of view, and I'm human services, we try to address it within the agencies and make them a specific issue that we have to address. I know it's probably not, Brandon, the answer that you want, but what people have to understand is whenever we do state law, state statute, we have to align with federal. And sometimes that makes it really difficult.
I appreciate.
I mean, I think we can brainstorm through it, right? If that's the point of this session, is what if we privatized it and came up with either, look, we have a foundation and we have municipal dollars and we have a private company. So ION will write a check for a certain amount of money that'll cover services for students with autism. The municipal will match it and it'll throw in some others, and then we'll fulfill on all of that. And I don't even want to make money on it. I'll do it just to cover my costs, just to make these services available. And we're statewide. I'll serve every town in the state. And we can do it outside of the need to meet federal laws. Dave just committed $100,000. I heard him think it, and the state's going to do the same.
I was trying
Brandon?
I was trying to freeze my computer, but it didn't work.
So Brandon, a couple of things. I would love to work with you on this. I think there's a really big opportunity. We have a virtual autism meeting, I think this coming Wednesday. I just received a notice. I think it's the 20th, if my brain is working properly. And I would love to bring it up to them about future steps, but I would love to work with you on this. I think that for every issue, there is a solution. It may not be the solution that everybody agrees upon, but I think that it's a step in the right direction. And let me just say something else about culture within our agencies. Just so you're aware, the governor does do a weekly meeting with all of his commissioners. They do try to hash out issues that have come up. I will say that you're absolutely right that the culture of any agency starts at the top, just like a business, right? They set the tone and we are a business, right? In a way. So I agree with you that we could do, especially in some of the areas, a lot better. But I think the more that people talk about it, and the more that, and when I say people, I mean people like you guys that are really the boots on the ground is what I like to call it. Bringing this up to your legislators, letting them be aware of it. You know, don't assume that your legislators in your area know all your issues, right? You know, you need to make them aware of it. You need to ask them to submit policy changes for you. Brendan, I would love to, if you would send me, or even after this call, give me a contact where you and I can talk about what's going on with the DMV right now on some of the specific issues you have, because I think what happens is there's so many people that have so many different issues that when it goes into the queue of some of these agencies, it gets lost. Whereas as an elected official, as a legislator, I have a direct link to DMV and can say, hey, you know, this is just common sense. Why are we not looking at this? Now, there are sometimes regulatory issues, right, that have to go through a process. But we also have language that says that if they believe that it's to the safety or the well-being of individuals, the regulatory portion of that can wait. So the issues that you're facing right now, I would be more than happy to work on that with you and see if there's some streamlining we can do through DMV.
Thank you for that, Kathy. And I know that, you know, just in the past few days, the governor's executive orders have developed over time. And that development really has been in response to what he's hearing directly from communities. So for instance,
Exactly.
I belong to a couple of boards where we weren't even allowed to meet remotely and make decisions on behalf of the organizations, the nonprofit organizations that we run for that reason. And he was able to quickly almost within days change that rule so that we can now continue the business of those nonprofits. So again, we're learning. We are building this ship as we fly it, which is harrowing and it's frightening, and especially because this is a public health emergency. But at the same time, it's these feedback loops that are really helping us all improve the way that we do what we do. And Kathy, your leadership is something that's so important. You are emblematic, I think, of what real state representatives that bring their communities to the Capitol are like. And also you bring the expertise to the entire state, and you're generous with your expertise. So thank you for that offer. And I'm really excited to have the two of you get to know each other better because, you know, Brandon, I don't know if you intended to be, but you are becoming a big advocate for people on the spectrum through your business, through what you do, and through the heart with which you lead your enterprise. And Ion Bank, you know, David, you've shown your community colors, and it's exciting to be able to see all of you continue to work together to improve the lives of people on the spectrum. I'd love to give each of you, as we now come to a close of our conversation, you know, I'd love to give each of you a closing thought. David.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and Kathy, thank you for all the things you do. You have been a steward for this state, and you know, as many challenges as we have from many years ago that are still piling up, I still love the state, and I think we're headed in a good direction. And as Stephen pointed out, as hard as it's been, and we're building this plane as we're flying, I think we are flying, and I think we are headed in a good direction, and we will come out of this better and stronger than ever before with the leadership that we have in place. And you know, I'm just proud to be part of that effort in some small way. And certainly we have our foundation looks at grants all the time. So if there is something on that autism, if there's a public-private partnership or whatever it is, please give us a call and we'll do our best to support it.
Thank you so much, David.
Kathy, that's a nice segue to you.
Well, so I'm thrilled to hear that from Ion because, like I said before, David, your bank has definitely been what every community bank should be. And, you know, I'll say it again, it's not just putting your money there, which is very important, especially now. You know, our nonprofits, especially in all communities, are really, really hurting. And I'm really concerned because the majority of them serve young people. And yeah, I'm concerned as to what's going to happen when this is all said and done. But I think you're right, Steve, in the sense of this is an opportunity for us to look at business differently in the state of Connecticut. And I think that there's been policies that have been floating out there that we have not been able to convince some of the agencies to really move forward on. So I'll give you an example. You know, through this pandemic, telehealth has been a lifeline across the board. You know, as chair of human services, I've been battling with DSS for 5 years around telehealth. We finally got them to do it around behavioral health. But since this pandemic, it's opened up a whole new world, right? And in my opinion, this codifies why it's the right thing to do. You know, so I think you're going to see a lot of more streamlined procedures going forward. And that's why, even to you, David, you know, from the banking point of view, this is an opportunity for you to put initiatives forward for legislators to say, hey, you know, if it was good enough through the pandemic and it worked, you know, now's our opportunity to do it as good policy. And, you know, I'm going to work with Brandon on some of these things. Definitely, Brandon, you know, you put it out there, and as Steve knows, I'm going to rely on you because Steve knows that I am the type of policymaker that does not sit back and think that I have all the answers. My policy comes from the boots on the ground, and all the stakeholders always have to have a seat at the table. And I do, believe it or not, the majority of my legislation is done in the fall when we're out of session. I like to put work groups together and work on issues, whether it's, you know, we did a whole forum last year on service animals, right? And what role they play and how they're misidentified and what people are doing out there. We've done some things on water safety. Steve and I worked on that big issue, you know. So I look forward to working with you Brendan, on some of these issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Brandon.
Thank you. Yeah, same, Representative Abercrombie. I really look forward to it, and I think we'll be able to do some great things. And even just in this brainstorm, I think discourse is what leads to the eventual solution. So as long as everybody's okay with that, we'll bring it. I want to kind of apologize for my dress, but also say my culture is company culture is the most important thing to us, and taking care of our staff. And so in pandemic, we have creatively come up with ways to focus on that. And so we used to do dress down Fridays, and we decided to continue that in remote work. So it's dress down Friday for us. And then at 4 o'clock, we're closing our company a little early and doing a remote pizza party. We just ordered pizzas to be delivered to all of our employee homes, and we're going to buy their families pizza and get on a Zoom call together. So if anybody wants to hang out at 4, our whole staff will be eating pizza. But thank you for the opportunity to talk and to be here. I love this state. I was born here. I was raised here. Teresa and I are raising our family here. And none of my criticisms come from a place of malintent. My criticisms all come from a place of wanting Connecticut to be what it was when I was a little kid. And I think that we can get back there again, but it will take real leadership and the willingness of people throughout the pandemic and then after to change the way that we communicate.
I agree.
Steve and Kathy, if I can make just one more plug, because I know you're connected. One of the PPP program is still active, and we've been trying to reach more women businesses and minority businesses. And I just don't know if we're not reaching enough, but I haven't seen enough statistics to show that we're reaching everyone. So if you have listeners or constituents that are any business, any small business, but certainly minority and women-owned businesses, we would love to really help them out. And it's awareness sometimes. If they just know that it's out there, we can help them. And if their existing bank can't help them, they should just go call us directly. They could even apply on our website directly. But getting the word out there, I know you have a lot of listeners and followers. So any small businesses that haven't looked at the PPP program, they really should look at it. There is still funds available, and we're processing within a day or two for the most part. So we're happy to help any customers or non-customers. But if you can't get help from your bank, please call us or at least make contact with a community bank. They seem to be better served in there. So just that last message out there to all your listeners.
Thank you, David.
So Dave,
ahead,
if I could,
Kathy.
Steve, I'm sorry. So Dave, if you would like to send me a little graphic with your with contact information, not particularly yours, but in general. It's funny you said that, because I got 2 emails today from a couple of small businesses that are saying nobody wants to help me. And I know every business situation is different, but I love the idea that I have somebody like yourself who's willing to be out there and really try to help these small businesses. You know, we heard a lot about the first round of the PPP, and that, you know, some of these banks were making sure that the people that were loyal to them in the sense of, you know, held their loans and stuff, they went to them first. That's not how it was intended. That's not how it should have worked. I think that we've all learned lessons from that, but I think this is an opportunity to really help, especially some of these small ones. So please send me, and Steve can give you all of my, he can email you all of my contact information. But I would love to post it on my Facebook. And
Great.
Also I do a weekly e-blast where I really try to tell, you know, my constituents everything that's going on in every area that I can help them. And I would love to be able to post this, you know, so that people have a place to go.
I'll send you that info right after the call. And in the meantime, they just go to imbank.com and either apply or make a call.
Or call Dave's
Thank
cell
you.
phone. I'll send you Dave's cell phone number. Just call him directly.
Anytime.
That's great. You can all know that we will be posting, in addition to posting this video that has been broadcasting on Facebook Live. It will be available on Facebook for sharing. We will include your contact information, David and Brandon, and I will send around an email that connects all of you so that you can
That'd be great.
continue a robust conversation. I want to thank all of you on behalf of the people of the state of Connecticut for your leadership. And and your emblematic, the emblematic way in which you show that leadership matters at every level. And you know, the subtext and really the motivating purpose here was really to talk about how we help every part of our community by working together, and not the least of which is our community of people on the spectrum. So for all of that work and for all that you do, I thank you, and let's continue the conversation.
Thanks, Steve.
Take
Thank
care.